Book your tickets at southernrailway.com. Southern Railway, we're with you.
7-9, and that's in two solid big figures. With the news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, as you just mentioned, President Trump says he will be holding a news conference at the White House this evening on the coronavirus. It will take place at 6 p.m. Wall Street time, and Bloomberg will carry it live. The director of the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says the virus is not spreading in the U.S., but that could change.
Things are stable here, which they are. And at the same time, we need to be ready to do things to contain an outbreak if it were to occur.
The U.S. has now confirmed 57 cases. Democrats unleashed an assault against Bernie Sanders during a contentious debate that tested the strength of the two men at the center of the party's presidential nomination fight. As the Democratic frontrunner, Sanders faced the brunt of the attacks for much of the night. During the debate, sponsored by CBS and aired on Bloomberg, Sanders defended the comments he made in regards to Cuban leader Fidel Castro.
Occasionally, it might be a good idea to be honest about American foreign policy. And that includes the fact that America has overthrown governments all over the world, in Chile, in Guatemala, in Iran. And when dictatorships, whether it is the Chinese or the Cubans, do something good, you acknowledge that. But you don't have trade love letters with them.
Sanders, along with former Vice President Joe Biden, head into this Saturday as they look for results in the South Carolina primary, and next week is Super Tuesday. Authorities in India say at least 20 people have been killed and 189 injured in 3 days of violence in New Delhi. The clashes are between Hindu mobs and Muslims protesting a new citizenship law that fast-tracks naturalization of foreign-born religious minorities, excluding Muslims. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Tom, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thank you very much, sir. Let's get to the price action of the morning, shall we? An hour out from the opening bell. Let's call it 47 minutes. Equities bounced back by a mild 0.4%, up 13 on the S&P 500. In the bond market, your 10-year Treasury up a single basis point to 137. As the session grows older, at least over the last couple of hours, things start to look just a little bit better. In the FX market in G10, it's the Aussie that underperforms. It's the Swiss franc that outperforms. Just a mild risk-off tone to foreign exchange. From New York, this is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg Radio.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. Mortgage rates are hovering around record lows, and that may have homeowners thinking about refinancing. And we had a chance to ask Tim Myopoulos, president of Blend and former CEO of Fannie Mae, about it. And he says the upstart companies in fintech aren't the only ones offering a streamlined online experience for borrowers right now.
So I think there are a lot of different players in this. There's sort of the pure fintechs that are actually lenders themselves, who are out there using their balance sheets and trying to grow that business. But at the end of the day, it's pretty hard to compete with 5,000 to 6,000 banks in the country, to say nothing of the credit unions. There's a really big balance sheets out there. And I think that the technology that's now available to those incumbent institutions is much, much better. So they can actually provide a similar consumer experience. And they already have the customer relationship in many cases.
Tim Myopoulos is president of Blend and former CEO of Fannie Mae. And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Connecting decision makers to a network of news and financial information 20.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
If you're going to have NHS dental treatment, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free treatment. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of £100, plus the cost of your treatment. Thankfully, the NHS Eligibility Checker will help you find out if you can claim for free. Then next time you're at the dentist, you'll know exactly which box to tick. Search Check Before You Tick online today.
Heading to Leeds to see the grandparents. Little one's going to get spoilt rotten. If your trip is over a week away and you haven't booked your train ticket yet, that means you're in line to book LNER's Mighty Fine 29. It's only £29 each way from London to Leeds if you travel between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Monday to Saturday. Nan, we're on our way. Book direct at lner.co.uk. £51,229 seats available up to a week before travel. Standard advance fares on direct trains, subject to availability.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are higher once again, while stocks in Europe and Asia drop as investors fretted over fresh evidence of the widening coronavirus outbreak. Right now, S&P futures are up 14 points, Dow futures up 103, and NASDAQ futures up 55. The DAX in Germany's down 0.1%. CAC in Paris, little change. FTSE 100 down 0.4%. Risk assets are struggling to rebound as coronavirus cases steadily climb outside China. Dennis Gartman tells Bloomberg Radio that investors don't appreciate the severity of the stock sell-off.
Be sold.
And here's Dennis Gartman.
Are to be sold into, not weakness to be bought. I'm amused or dismayed at how many people are still willing to buy the dip, and I think this dip is far more serious than people want to anticipate at this point.
And again, that's economist Dennis Gartman speaking to Bloomberg Radio. Right now, the 10-year Treasury is down 4/30 seconds, the yield 1.36%. Yield on the 2-year, 1.20%. NYMEX crude oil's down 1.1% or 54 cents at $49.37 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.9% or $14.40 at $16.35.80 an ounce. The euro at 1.0859 against the dollar. The yen is at 110.48. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. Wonderful to hear Dennis Gartman there. Lisa, I've put out 3 or 4 times here one of the historic Gartman trades. He's been wrong a few times, but he has nailed, after patience, gold in euro, and particularly gold set in yen, where you hedge dollar gold over to yen, and it's a moonshot way out over the 1980 pricing.
And we can't overemphasize how important the PMI data is going to be later this week out of China to get a sense of how much that entire economy has ground to a halt. And that'll really bleed into how low the dip really goes.
Right now, we have to move from whatever we observed last night. I'll be honest, folks, I turned it off 70 minutes into it. I emailed Cirilli and said, you watch it. I can't. Joining us now, our chief Washington correspondent.
Said, thanks for the advice, Tom.
He staggers to Saturday. I forgot to tell you, Lisa. Sorry. He staggers to Saturday and then to Super Tuesday. Kevin, did anybody last night speak to Super Tuesday, or was it just a South Carolina free-for-all?
I think Joe Biden did. I think there's a lot of pressure on the Biden campaign to meet the expectations that he's going to win here in South Carolina. But I didn't notice the trajectory of the race changing. Honestly, it was the advantage of being on the ground is that you get a preview of where the race is headed. And I think that what I'm gathering is that Tom Steyer has not said he's going to drop out of the race. But, I mean, if Tom Steyer or
Kevin, he wore a plaid tie.
But he said if he doesn't perform well in South Carolina that he would reevaluate. And I think that in whispers in the spin room last night, there's this expectation that a week from tomorrow, Wednesday morning, the morning after Super Tuesday, that some of these candidates will start to reevaluate.
Lisa, my grandmother with a scotch in her hand gave me one of those god-awful scotch ties.
I love this.
Like a million years ago. And wear the tie your grandmother gave you.
Okay, my sister's going to hate me.
Second. Tom is literally judging the candidate based on his tie, the viability of his candidacy.
I thought Vice President Biden's tie was very presidential.
Wow, tie, just definitely an important note. Yes, I will say, though, Jeannie Zaino came on earlier in the show, and she was talking about how structurally it is set up against the Democrats and that President Trump will continue to win as they try to tear each other down. Do you feel like that is the case? Is there anything that Democratic candidates are saying that they could do to potentially unite while also distinguishing themselves? That is sort of the backwater discussion today.
Well, I think Jeannie makes a great point because it on the one hand, you've got Sanders and then laying down a marker. And he was actually at times, if you go back and look at the transcript or you pull the footage, which, Tom, I have no life, so that's what I do. I know.
That's his job, Tom, that's his job.
But he actually, he threw some compliments at the direction of, yes, former New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg at one point, as well as some of the other candidates, which I found to be incredibly interesting. That said, I think that the more that the candidates try to keep making this a two-person race between them and someone else, usually it's Sanders, the less likely it is that they're able to have that praise for the other campaigns. The bottom line is that I don't think this did anything to change the trajectory. I think that the real story is going on behind the scenes about how many delegates Bernie Sanders says he's going to need if he doesn't reach 1,991 for him to be able to say that this is a done deal and he gets the nomination.
Did the momentum change at all last night?
No, not at all. Not at all. And I think, again, barring any big upset here in South Carolina, really, next Wednesday is when I think we'll have some more clarity.
Okay, we're gonna have some more clarity Wednesday, and then what's the date calendar here? The actual vote is Saturday, right?
Correct. And then
is there another debate before Super Tuesday?
No, so that was really it. I mean, and so the next time there's a debate, it's going to be quite interesting because we'll have so much more data and delegates.
So the senator from Massachusetts had X% of the time yesterday, whatever it is, folks. I don't have it in front of me. I don't care. But she had X% of the time. But how does she campaign in the 52 states of Super Tuesday? How does she do that?
Well, I think for people like her, for Senator Klobuchar, for Bloomberg,
Amtrak,
Buttigieg. Well, I mean, I think that that's where they feel a strong debate showing will help them make their case. But I think for Warren's really auditioning, it feels, to be a progressive attack dog in the closing argument of this campaign. Her campaign says she wants to be a unifying candidate.
Lisa, it's like when you went out in that VW O'Connell van, like a few years ago when you came out of college, and it was like you were reliving Field of Dreams, and they were playing Jessica, and Born to Be Wild and all that.
I love the image that Tom has of me. This is just cool, I will say. By the way, talking of being in the Field of Dreams, Kevin, where are you?
I'm sorry if it's loud. Please don't.
It's fine. Where are you?
I'm on King Street in Charleston.
Oh, you're outside Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Have you ever been
waffles
there, Tom?
yesterday for Fat Tuesday?
Okay, so to speak. Kevin Cirilli, thank you so much. We greatly appreciate the 24/7 work. Our chief Washington correspondent, doing where we discovered him on the campaign trail.
Yeah, just wandering
what he said there.
The dreams.
So important, Lisa. He said, if you're on the ground, it's different. And my experience of this, nothing like Mr. Cirilli's, is that is so true.
The key question I have is, what's turnout going to be like? And in New Hampshire, it was a lot higher.
I agree.
But New Hampshire is a very small state that's not representative of the Democratic electoral base. And I do wonder, and this is to Jeannie's point earlier, she was saying turnout is typically very light for primaries. Is it going to be different this time? How much emphasis will there be on trying to make this a more united and group effort to
vote for someone.
We're ahead of ourselves, but Trump-Sanders, what does that do to the turnout? I mean, that's an absolutely original election.
It's original.
What does it do to
we
turnout?
should say Michael Bloomberg, since Kevin mentioned it. Would you like to do it, or would you like me to do it?
No, please disclaim.
Yeah, I'm going to disclaim away.
We can do it together.
Okay, we'll hold hands.
3, 2, 1. Michael Bloomberg is founder of Bloomberg LP and also this television and radio station. This is a band, Lisa. This is Mrs. Mick and Keith. Cher had to get up and with a guy named Sonny.
Bloomberg surveillance.
This is Bloomberg.
Message and data rate may apply. TNC.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
The famous five were discussing their next adventure to Cardiff. Let's visit the Millennium Centre, said Dick. The National Museum, added Julian. The castle, cried Anne. Dick jumped up. We'd better leave now. Cardiff's so far away. Relax, said George. It's faster than you think by train. Anyway, we can't go yet. You're still in your pyjamas. London to Cardiff in as little as 1 hour 42 minutes. So adventures are closer than you think. Great Western Railway. Adventures start here. Fastest train from Paddington to Cardiff Central. Terms and conditions apply.
The Dacia Sandero and Dacia Duster have both won What Car Awards in 2020. And with double the award comes double the celebration. So, we've put a second candle on the cake. Starting from only $6,995, our prices are pretty modest, just like our celebrations. Visit dacia.co.uk to find out more about our range of award-winning cars. Dacia, you do the maths.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business Radio.com and iHeartRadio apps and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
The good news is the economy is strong. The bad news is the economy is strong.
Financial crises take a really long time to recover from.
Finance.
The strong job market's pulling people back in.
You can't have for very long, monetary union without a fiscal union.
Investment.
What we preach is extreme diversification. It's hard to have sustained productivity without capital investment.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Bloomberg Surveillance, Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. An extraordinary day in the market. Not big down, not big up. Ugly at 4 a.m. this morning when I wandered in off the Bentley. But I'll tell you, Paul, you look at the market today and the volatility, the flightiness of it with a better tape in the last hour.
Yeah, exactly, Tom. I mean, I'm just looking at the futures here, up about 0.25% on the equity futures. The question is, we kind of saw this a little bit yesterday morning at this time, and then the markets rolled over. So we'll see when we get these things open, what traders are really looking to do here.
You took a phone call with Iger last night at 9 p.m., right?
Absolutely.
What did he tell you?
Absolutely. It was really a shock. The timing of the pick, Bob Chapek, and even the pick himself of Bob Chapek was a little bit of a surprise to investors. We kind of thought that Kevin Mayer, the streaming guy, would get the shot, but he thinks the time is right to make the move.
Our team has killed it in the last 24 hours trying to get good voices for you. In this hour, Nora Rubini will join us, and we're thrilled to tell you Michael Nathanson will join us from Moffett-Nathanson.
That's great.
On In Media. And, I know Hulu, they surreptitiously did some Hulu changes as well.
Yes.
Along there as well. Futures up 9, Dow futures up 56. The VIX in 1.73 points, 26.12. You had some 28 VIX angst about 4 hours ago. And right now, where are we? We're 28 minutes to trading. We got a better tape, not the best tape of the day, but it's there. The good news is airlines off the bottom. David Wilson, you got 8 ways to start this morning, but you go with a good news story.
Well, just to explain why it is we're seeing the futures higher in early trading, travel-related stocks more broadly are rebounding after days of leading the market down. You look at the airlines, you see American up 2.5% in early trading. You see Delta up more than 1%, United up about 1.5%, and you see similar moves in the cruise lines. Carnival higher by 1.5%, and Royal Caribbean up 1%. But you already talked about Disney. We have to note those shares down 1.5% after Bob Iger abruptly stepped down as CEO. He'd led that company since 2005. And so now it's Bob Chapek's company to run. Of course, he had headed Disney's theme park unit. Iger's staying on as chairman through the end of next year. Then you have Salesforce.com down 1%.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you for doing that.
Right? Absolutely. Co-CEO Keith Block resigned from the business software maker, and he'd run the company alongside founder Mark Benioff, who's now sole CEO as well as chairman. The change outweighed an increase in Salesforce's annual revenue forecast.
And was this a surprise like Disney Iger? I mean, he's been there for, 2 years?
Yeah, I suppose it's the challenge of being able to lead a company like that when the guy who started it is right there with
that
you.
May be. I mean, they really tried, Paul, in the press release to say lovey-dovey, everybody's happy. But I was surprised.
I was surprised too, and you got a strong founder here, co-founder Mark Benioff.
Yeah, I don't know.
Me neither.
What else do you have?
I got plenty. You've got Lowe's up 2%. The home improvement chain's earnings for the fiscal fourth quarter beat analyst average estimate in the Bloomberg survey, even though sales came up short. Now, Lowe's results followed well-received figures yesterday from rival Home Depot. And well-received in this case mean the stock only fell 1% when the S&P 500 fell a lot more. TJX up 7.5%. This is a company that owns the off-price retailers TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and Home Goods. Fiscal fourth quarter earnings and revenue beating projections there. Fiat Chrysler's up 8.5%. The automaker's would-be buyer, Peugeot maker PSA Group of France, reported higher than expected earnings for last year. PSA said it's taken steps to guard against an auto market slump. And then we turn to Toll Brothers. That stock's down 10%. Wow. Biggest builder of luxury homes here in the U.S. Fiscal first quarter earnings coming up short of estimates, and it was the first shortfall for Toll in the last 7 quarters. Smile Direct Club down even more, 23.5%. This is the company that sells teeth aligners and braces online.
I walked by their store the other day. I know both of you go in on a, like every other day basis. What do they do?
They sell braces and other types of teeth aligners, so they compete with.
Do you know, like, David, there's no one in my house who doesn't have braces. Vet Bill has braces. I mean, Smile Direct, what are they? Like a dental office, right?
Kind of like that, but the company had a wider net loss and lower revenue for the fourth quarter than analysts predicted, so that's the downside. Wendy's lower by 2%. The restaurant chain predicted this year's earnings will be 62 cents a share at best. Analysts expected 65 cents on average, according to a Bloomberg survey. And this one you're going to love, Tom.
Right.
Beyond Meat.
Oh, I tried it the other day. So glad you continued.
Oh, my
Shares
goodness.
are higher by 5.5%. Starbucks will begin selling a breakfast sandwich with the company's plant-based sausage in Canada next Tuesday. And that sandwich will be available in most of Starbucks' more than 1,500 locations.
Help me, guys. You know I'm a Famiglia guy. Like, I'm just like a basic cheese thing. So I'm out. I'm with the fam, and they go, we got to get something with fig and prosciutto on it or whatever. Good morning. Oath Pizza. It's really quite good. So you go into Oath, and I'm there, and David, just for you, I ordered up the Beyond Meatball. Okay, they've got Beyond Meat meatballs.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, it was quite good. I don't know what it was doing for me, but I must. If they hadn't, David, if they hadn't told me it was Beyond Meat, I wouldn't have known it.
That's
the key point. That's a key point. Good morning, Oath Pizza as well. I'll bet you our next guest eats, once a week at Oath Pizza?
Sure.
It's sort of like lawyer-type law people.
Let's go to Shira Stein. She's Bloomberg Law reporter. Tom, get the latest on what's going on with the coronavirus as it relates to Congress and funding, some issues as it relates to the coronavirus. Shira Stein, thanks so much for joining us.
Important with the president's press conference tonight, 6 p.m.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. The president, 6 p.m. Wall Street time, will have a press conference to address the coronavirus. So, Shira, thanks so much for joining us. So give us a sense of how Congress is viewing the coronavirus and how maybe to combat it. Do we have the resources?
No. That's why the president and Secretary Azar are asking for more funding. There isn't enough. There isn't enough funding for masks. There isn't enough funding for vaccine testing and all that. But lawmakers feel like they're not getting enough information, and also that the president might not be asking for enough money. They're really worried that there's not going to be enough money. The Senate Appropriations Chairman says, we'll pay for it if we lowball it right now.
So, Sherry, I mean, is there new funding being requested or just kind of shifting existing funding? What's kind of where we are right now?
So it's a combination. The president is asking for $1.25 billion in new funds and an additional $1.25 million being transferred from other accounts. But just this morning, some colleagues of mine reported that Senator Schumer is preparing a package of $8.5 billion in new funding. And a former HHS official and Raymond James analyst, Christensen, said that $15 billion would actually be more appropriate.
Okay, just because of the phone connection, Cheryl, we're going to wander away with an important conversation as we move from 2-ish and 3-ish billion out to Senator Schumer's $8 billion statistic, I believe I heard there. Shira Stein with Bloomberg Law today. The president, let's review this. We were in TV early this morning at Andrews. The president off of Air Force One in the morning in the fog, a quiet return by the president through Germany from India to the White House, tweeting up a storm on different topics, of course, including what he saw, what he observed in the debates. But, there it is, 6 p.m. tonight, right in primetime news, and he made very clear he will stand next to the people from CDC as they report on this to America.
That's right, and we'll get the first, kind of official kind of views from the president as it relates to kind of what the U.S. government needs to do and is willing to do and is able to do to combat what could be a growing issue within the U.S.
Paul, I want to take the time now, and this sets up folks for Michael Nathanson later with MoffettNathanson. Paul, the culture of a company is so important. And with Disney, it was always a frugal set of brothers, Walt Disney doing creative, Roy Disney ran it. And then what so many people today don't know, particularly with the success of Mr. Iger, is there was a Lost in the Woods era for the Walt Disney Company, wasn't there?
Yeah, there really was. It was kind of a question that from a creative standpoint, that maybe they had kind of lost their momentum. And this was before they were, they had all these great film franchises that we're so used to now, whether it's all the superhero stuff and the Marvel stuff and the Star Wars. So they really had a time there where animation animation kind of fell out of favor in Hollywood a little bit, and that was kind of their bread and butter. And so, Michael Eisner, as you mentioned earlier today,
he's the one that figured out, Paul, how to put Mary Poppins in a VCR.
Yep.
Why do you watch Mary Poppins at home when you have kids?
You watch it.
It's the longest movie.
Yeah,
it's going. Here, just sit here. You eat your Cheerios, and Dad's going to sleep.
Exactly right. So, and then of course, so Eisner really had a great run there. It wasn't so much of a great ending there, as succession plans did not work out well. He had some issues with Roy Disney, and then along comes Bob Iger, which it looks like he came in right out of central casting for a Hollywood CEO, or just a CEO in general.
So when Iger came in, you knew he'd be successful?
No, I think there was definitely some concern there, but I think what the market felt like was stability. Yeah. And there was the prior 2 years when the handover of power from Michael Eisner, and he was being sued by Roy Disney, and just all kinds of bad blood there. So when you saw Bob Iger, what a lot of people saw was stability.
And what's so important here, folks, and Paul's too modest to do this. Besides inventing Bloomberg Intelligence for Mr. Secunda and Mr. Bloomberg, Paul has done. What's your longest sell-side report? You did a 4-page report once,
I might have done one.
You might have done a 4-page report at some point. So the thing here is, if Iger does creative as executive chairman, he plays a part of Walt Disney, and the new guy plays a part of Roy Disney, right? Is it that simple?
I think it might be. There's also, I think, a transition period there. Again, this timing, this was very sudden. The senior executives didn't even know about it yesterday, the day of the announcement. So
Rich Greenfield knew.
Rich Greenfield probably knew. And Michael Nathanson probably knew as well. So I think there's going to be a little aspect of transition there, and that's to kind of, I think, to calm any concerns within Disney among the rank and file creative Imagineers as well as investors.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be fascinating to say the least. Futures up 12, down futures up 75, and again, Noira Rabini to join us, Michael Nathanson to join us. Right now with the news in New York City to join us, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Paul. President Trump will hold a news conference at the White House this evening about the coronavirus. And as you've heard reported here on Bloomberg, the president will be flanked by members of the CDC. And he will speak at 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Bloomberg will carry it live. Meanwhile, the first U.S. military soldier has tested positive for the coronavirus. His infection and many others are connected to the South Korean city of Daegu, where the government has been mobilizing to contain the virus. The soldier is quarantined at his off-base home. USAG Daegu Commander Colonel Edward Blanco says medical crews are retracing the service members' movements to determine who may have been exposed.
We already know some places that the service member has been, and we're already taking action right now.
South Korea has seen infection surge to more than 1,200. Italy's reporting 19 more cases. 7 Democratic presidential candidates held a wild debate last night ahead of contests in South Carolina and Super Tuesday. The debate was sponsored by CBS and aired on Bloomberg, and hearing this exchange, the candidates weren't besties.
No,
Senator Sanders, we would like to bring Mr. Steyer in on this conversation. Mr. Steyer, please.
I was talking about all your programs.
Excuse me, Amy.
Front runner Bernie Sanders.
That sounds like our show.
Yeah. That's true that. Front runner Bernie Sanders took the brunt of the attacks. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts, more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Paul Tom.
Oh, people, you have no idea what it's like when the microphone is off. That was just such a vignette there into the real Bloomberg surveillance. Michael Barr, as always, thank you so much for the snapshot into the debate. Futures up 11, the VIX 25.97, a better shape. This is Bloomberg.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Influential.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I trained to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner. I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital is at risk. Tax laws may change. Full terms for our Stocks and Shares ISA are available on our website, 18 plus UK residents.
If you're going to have NHS dental treatment, don't assume you can claim it for free. Not all benefits entitle you to free treatment. And if you claim when you're not entitled, you could face a penalty charge of £100, plus the cost of your treatment. Thankfully, the NHS Eligibility Checker will help you find out if you can claim for free. Then next time you're at the dentist, you'll know exactly which box to tick. Search Check Before You Tick online today.
Peoples of London, are you like Sergey, working your paws off from 9 to 5, then cooking for whole family? Well, I, Alexander, have taken responsibility for tonight's splendid evening meal.
Ooh, let me guess, Meerkat meals?
Of course, you know how I roll. Get 2 for 1 on food with Meerkat meals at your local favorites, like Little Napoli, when you buy through Compare the Market. Qualifying purchase, app only, 2 for 1 on selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are moving higher, while stocks in Europe and Asia dropped as investors fret over fresh evidence of the widening coronavirus outbreak. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up about 13 points. Dow futures up 78. NASDAQ futures up 50. 10-year Treasury down 230. Yield 1.36%, and the yield on the 2-year 1.19%. And NYMEX crude oil is down 0.9% or 46 cents at $49.44 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. He needs no introduction. Of course, my work at Davos for years has been important to Bloomberg surveillance. It is Rubini Macro Associates. It is New York University, and we're thrilled that Professor Rubini could join us this morning. Nuria, I'm going to cut to the chase. You are one of the great old world voices out there. Your heritage of the Middle East, and of course, coming over to all your work in Italy years ago. Would you travel to Italy today?
Yeah, I would travel to Italy today, but I think that I would take with me a mask because, of course, this is a global pandemic, spread to Italy. And by the way, I worry about the fact that today the health ministers of Italy, Germany, France, EU said that the borders of Europe are going to remain open. If you think about it, in 2015, when there was this wave of refugees, the Schengen Treaty was effectively blocked. You couldn't go from country to country without checks. Today we have a much more serious problem. The risk that it's going to spread from Italy to parts of Europe, and they say everything is fine. It's a bit of a paradox.
Right. I want to parse between what all of our listeners and viewers know, which is supply-side economics, which is almost a theology. I don't want to get into the theory now. You've always pushed against that theory. And a supply shock within the geometry of basic economics. Have we ever seen in the modern day a supply shock like we're living right now?
Well, there were supply shocks in the 70s when you had the oil shocks, in 73 after Yom Kippur War, 79 Iranian Revolution, 1990 Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Those were shocks that reduced growth, that increased inflation. So we had supply shocks were negative, but they were related to geopolitical shocks in the Middle East. This is a different type of a supply shock. It's still stagflationary, reduces growth, increases cost and inflation, but it is a supply shock, it's negative.
So, Professor, up until 2 days ago, one could argue that the equity markets were kind of just shrugging off this coronavirus, where if you look at the commodity markets, we had some pretty significant pullbacks. You look at the bond market, yields plunging to new lows. Even after the 2-day sell-off we've had in the equity markets over the last 2 days, how do you think financial markets, are they properly discounting the risk associated to global GDP growth from this virus, potentially?
No, I don't think so, for at least 4 reasons. Reason number one, this is a global pandemic. It's going to spread not only to Europe, but to Asia and even to the United States, like the CDC warned. That's going to be massive. Second, the idea there's going to be a peak of the shock to the global economy being by the end of the first quarter doesn't make sense. If you think about supply chain shocks, trade channels, confidence, what's going to happen to capex, to consumer confidence, the impact is going to be into second quarter. 3, everybody said V-shaped recovery. That's also total utter nonsense. The Chinese economy is going to contract the annualized rate of at least 2%. Annualized of 8, but within the quarter of 2%. Even if there is a V-shaped recovery and grows 8%, that is well above the 6 of before the crisis, you're going to have growth in China going this year from 6 to 4. If the V-shape means that in the second and third and fourth quarter growth goes back to 6%, with a shock to the first quarter, Chinese growth is going to be 2.5%. So the best we can expect from China is 4, at the most likely 2.5%, when now markets are estimating the Chinese growth is going to go from 6 to 5.5. So markets are delusional, first about the impact on Chinese growth and the impact on the global economy. Final point, people hope that central banks or fiscal policy is going to come to the rescue. Fiscal policy, there is not much space, there are lags, and central banks are running out of bullets. Certainly BOJ, certainly the ECB, certainly what's happening right now in Japan, Italy implies that not much the ECB BOJ can do.
I know you're shortlisted for governor of the Fed here when the president gets through his next tranche of appointees. Noriel, to cut to
I would never take the job from Trump or any job from Trump. None ever.
Noriel, to cut to the chase, yes. Kacho Lakota, a legit front-level mathematics economist, says cut rates now, and a lot of other people, including the vice chairman, say not. What's the efficacy of a rate cut right now?
Whenever you have a negative supply shock that damages global supply chains, cutting interest rates is not going to make much of a difference. Of course, the market is going to rally on news of that cut or news that the cut is coming. But once then the economic spillover, the financial spillovers, and the other spillovers become severe, doing 25 basis points, even 50 basis points, but the Fed is not going to make any difference. And the problem right now is that the contagion, the pandemic is already in Japan, is already in Italy and Europe. And what's the room that BOJ and ECB have? Going to minus 60 for the ECB, minus 20 for the BOJ, and what 10 basis points, even 20 basis points of more negative rates is going to make in the face of a massive negative supply shock? Close to nothing.
Okay. So what do you think China needs to do, should do, to support its economy, given what's happened there?
Well, you know, the intelligent Chinese economists say we already had this major shock. The worst thing we could do is another round of massive monetary, fiscal, and credit stimulus, because every time there is a growth shock, they do another round of debt. There is more debt, more leverage, more overcapacity, and more economic damage that eventually leads to the risk of a financial crisis in China. So the sensible Chinese economists say, unfortunately, there's a growth shock. Yes, we have to backstop those that have been hurt, provide maybe income relief, make sure that most firms, especially the smaller ones, don't go bankrupt. But that's the extent of the support we want to give. This is a negative supply shock. We'll have to accept the shock and the consequences of it and try to have mild economic response. If you do more of that, then the risk is that the debt becomes unsustainable, even in China.
What's the risk of helicopter money? I mean, Hong Kong today is going to trot out 10,000 Hong Kong, which, you know, is enough to get 3 drinks at the M Bar at the Mandarin. Great. But is there efficacy to helicopter money, to true cash stimulus?
Well, whenever there's going to be the next global recession, I'm sure that monetary policy and fiscal is going to become more unconventional, and variants of helicopter drop of money, MMT, People's QE, or what Bernanke or Stan Fisher and the folks at BlackRock suggested is essentially variants of helicopter drop, is going to be implemented. Right. My point is that if there's a demand shock, monetary and fiscal stimulus helps you. If you have a negative supply shock like the 70s, we did the monetary stimulus, we did the fiscal stimulus, and we ended up with high debts and high inflation. Right. So even if you do the helicopter drop, it may not have as much of an impact in a situation which the shock is a negative supply rather than a negative demand shock.
20 seconds. You had an essay in the FT today. I haven't had time to read it. What'd you say? Save me some time here in Oriel.
Well, 4 points that I briefly made. One, this is a global pandemic.
What's the key point right now? It's a pandemic.
It's a global pandemic. The economic impact is going to be much more severe. It's not going to be a V-shaped recovery. Chinese growth is going to be at best 2.5%. The global economy is going to slow sharply, and the policy response is not going to make the difference.
You look tanned and rested.
I'm always tanned and rested. I always travel. I just came back from 5 weeks all over the world, but not in China.
Very good. Nora Rubini, stay away from me. With Rubini Associates, greatly appreciated. Futures up 14. This is Bloomberg. Michael Nathanson next.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. equity index futures, they're edging higher this morning with stocks in Europe and Asia.
When you're driving along a motorway, you should keep left unless you're overtaking, no matter how many lanes the motorway has. It's important. Keeping left makes the motorway safer, helps traffic flow more freely, and keeps us all moving. Because we all want to be somewhere. Somewhere like home. Just in time for another peaceful bedtime with the kids. Follow the signs. Keep us all moving. Search Highways England Motorways to find out more.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning. I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. The opening bell brought to you by SEI. Asset managers can exceed new thresholds for data management, reporting, and responsiveness. Transform your business with SEI's global operating platform at SEIC.com/IMS. And the S&P 500 is higher at the open. It's up 0.5% or 16 points at 3144. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 0.5% or 143 points at 27,228. And the Nasdaq's up 0.7% or 66 points at 90.32. 10-year Treasury down 4/32, yield 1.36%. The yield on the 2-year 1.19%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.4% or 20 cents at 49.70 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.9% or $14.10 at 16.36 an ounce. The euro 1.0862 against the dollar. The yen is at 110.54. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Right now, nationwide, the wonderful congressman from South Carolina, Mr. Clyburn, is setting up his endorsement off of last night's debate. And, of course, he has huge influence on the African-American vote in the state of South Carolina. We'll bring that to you when we see it. He's now introducing people with smiles around. One of the things that's going to change at the Walt Disney Company, Paul, is where they do the conference call with the sell side. And I just want to say it's going to be great to see Michael Nathanson taking that call with a Parks guy on Splash Mountain.
Exactly right.
I can see Nathanson going down that log tube on Splash Mountain, buy, hold, or sell.
Michael Nathanson, MoffettNathanson, founding partner and senior research analyst. Michael, thanks so much for joining us on the phone here. Boy, the news last night, I'll just speak for myself, took me by surprise. What do you make of the news we heard?
Yeah, Paul, Tom, good morning. You're not alone. It took us all by surprise, right? You had an earnings call 2 weeks ago that I was on the radio with the guys 2 weeks ago talking about, and there's not another bit of news for a couple of weeks or months. So it was just weird that in the middle of February they decided to announce that change. And everyone's trying to figure out, like, why? What is significant about this timing? So we were surprised by the timing, but, you know, Bob had been very clear that his time was coming up, that he was done with his job, his last contract. We thought there'd be a change, but probably later in the year. So it's really about the timing of the change, the announcement of the timing, but wasn't the change itself.
So, Michael, tell us a little bit about Bob Chapek. What do you know about him?
Okay, so Bob Chapek is someone who has a long career at the Walt Disney Company. He works in home video when home video was really important to Walt Disney. He works in consumer products, and consumer products is a very, very important segment. It's highly profitable. And then he moved over to the parks business. And the parks business, for all the focus on ESPN, the parks business is the single biggest driver of Walt Disney earnings growth, right? The U.S. parks are about 30% of profitability. And the parks business, what Chapek did is he put through a surge pricing like Uber, where they raise pricing peak times and lower pricing dynamically during slow times. That never was the case. They would have one price for all seasons. So they put a lot of capital in the ground. They built new rides, new exhibits, and they really drove pricing. So he has a very long background there, and I think it's a good choice. It's a natural choice for me to see happen here.
Is this a partition that this August company is comfortable with? Walt Disney is the Bob Iger, and Roy Disney will be the new gentleman?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, when Iger was put in that role, no one really knew what to expect from Bob Iger, right? There was a lot of chatter about he was the wrong guy. You know, there was a book written all about
Sweeney wrote a 4-page research report, a long report at that time.
Yeah, I think he downgraded it on the Bob Iger hire, right, Paul?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Tom, we don't know. I think what Disney has become is there are these centers of content excellence that will live on when Bob Iger is gone. Right? You've got Pixar, Marvel, and Star
it's incredible.
Wars, right? And the question is, does every vertical have a leader with the right vision, game plan? And I kind of think that where they are now is they made a lot of tough decisions. They moved into digital distribution. They took profitability down. I almost think like they just need to pretty much be able to pivot and adjust their models when they see things change. So that content creation to me is now pushed out to the brands themselves. And Bob Iger was a great capital allocator in deciding where to go. But I don't think one person could actually run this company the way it used to be run. Yeah, that's what I think.
So, Michael, let's talk about the big pivot for the Walt Disney Company really over the last couple of years has been towards streaming. That's kind of the future of the company. And that got a lot of investors and just watchers thinking that the guy who runs that business, Kevin Mayer, would be probably the most likely to get the nod. What do you think happened there, and what kind of signal does this send? And what do you think of what Kevin's future might be with that company?
Yeah, Paul, that's a really good question. After the last quarter where they put up 28 million subs, in one quarter, roughly half of Netflix in a quarter, the speculation was like, hey, Kevin is now in pole position. But, the parks and consumer products are a big driver of this company. Kevin's just started operationally for the past 1 or 2 years. I think JPEG represents more of the legacy Disney business, and the parks business is a DTC business, right? At Disney, DTC was built. They actually knew the customers. They had credit cards on Tom's family, right? Like that's the only business that actually knew who was walking in the door. So I think he has more DTC than meets the eye.
What is DTC?
Direct to consumer. It's basically, yeah. So Tom, it's the ability to identify you and your family, and then market and upsell you. And the parks, has proven that year in year out, they can take money out of your pocketbook better than anybody.
Here's my experience. On Disney, one of the middle child. Used to go to lacrosse camp down there for a quote-unquote week, and then I figured out a week was 4.5 days. That's a Disney. That's a Disney model, Paul.
So, Michael,
4.5 day week.
Michael, what do you think the legacy will be for Bob Iger?
Well, it's funny. A couple years ago, I remember Tom and I sat down, and he was like, Tom said to me, "Is this a Jack Welch legacy? Right? Does whoever gets after Bob just never rise? The legacy of Welch just shattered everyone. I think the legacy of Iger, is and will be incredibly strong, right? For a person who basically was courageous in doing the right thing for the company, not for the short term, but for the long term. His acquisitions, which you could go on, like Tom and Paul, I'm on the record, when he bought Pixar and Marvel, we scratched our head. We're like, the ROI doesn't work. So I think the legacy of this is a guy who courageously built the company into what it is today. He took down earnings to pretty much build it going forward by investing in direct-to-consumer businesses. I think his legacy is going to be great. I really do. I think and I'm sad because it's one of the true legends in our industry, and he was a spokesperson for all of media, and that spokesperson is gone.
How much work do they have on the integration with the Fox property?
A lot of work, Tom, and that's that's why the timing is interesting, because that integration needs to get done. The Fox assets on the studio side, the film studio, have been very disappointing. They have this business in India, Star, very important, and they want to roll out Disney in Disney Plus in India. So there's a lot of integration to be done, and that deal's less than a year old. So that's why the timing, to Paul's first question, is surprising, because integration's key right now for that Fox.
I'm confused. I mean, like, I get the idea movies don't matter, but then you just said they do matter because Fox has been disappointing.
Yeah.
Are movies profitable?
Oh, for Walt Disney Company, Disney has $3 billion of EBITDA. They were, in the studio business. They had $11 billion of box last year. They are the only company that actually prints money consistently in the film business. So if you ask me about other film studios, they don't matter. But at Disney, the film studios then spin out consumer products. They spin out rides. They spin out direct-to-consumer businesses. They do matter for Disney.
I mean, people, like, they got Vet Bill at home, his hair done up like Baby Yoda, and like Mandalorian or whatever it's called. What is that property actually worth? I mean, if that's Iger's swan song here in creative, that's been a home run, hasn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we don't know how many of those subs that signed up for Disney Plus were there for the Mandalorian, right? But if you think about, they paid $4 billion for Star Wars, for Lucasfilm, $4 billion for Marvel. The Mandalorian is going to be a subset of $4 billion, but those assets drive engagement, right? They realize in a cluttered media world, having those brands stand out.
They don't drive engagement. They change the hair on the damn dog.
That's right. Hey, Michael, last question. Just, the stock's been under pressure. I think coronavirus getting a lot of play there at the Walt Disney Company. Frame out how you're viewing it, the impact on their theme parks and their other businesses.
Well, Paul, a couple weeks ago in the early morning hours, I spoke to Tom and John, and we talked about coronavirus. And at that point, it was restricted to China. So I made maybe two quick remarks saying, look, those theme parks don't represent more than 3% of the profitability of the Walt Disney Company, so I'm not worried about Chinese parks. Well, Japan's another that creates earnings growth, and so does the U.S. business, which is the biggest one of the biggest drivers. So as the fears spread, I do worry that in the short run you're going to have negative earnings revisions in the U.S. People not wanting to travel. So, my first rule of thumb in media is earnings revisions drive stocks. So in the short run, this coronavirus fear is a huge headline risk for this company. They're the only ones in media that have that risk, unfortunately.
Michael, thank you so much. Michael Nathanson with us, with Nathanson. Wonderful to have him on. Again, we protect the copyright of all of our guests. You can get his important report on Disney through Moffett-Nathanson. Green on the screen, up 300 on the Dow, 27,379. The VIX in a solid 2.47 points, 25.38. The two-year yield back above 120, a better tape here in the last 3 hours. With our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. President Trump will hold a news conference on the coronavirus this evening. The White House news conference will take place at 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Bloomberg will carry it live. Around the world, there are about 81,000 cases of the virus. The director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Anthony Fauci, says we are close to a tipping point.
We have a bad epidemic in China, and we have countries that are starting to have community spread, which is essentially getting us closer and closer to what you would consider the definition of a pandemic.
Dr. Fauci says the virus is not spreading in the U.S. for now. Representative James Clyburn of South Carolina has just announced his endorsement for Joe Biden for president. The former vice president took part in last night's Democratic presidential debate in South Carolina. In the debate presented by CBS and aired on Bloomberg, Biden stressed his discomfort with Russia's interference with the country's elections and how President Donald Trump handled it.
They are engaged now, as I speak, in interfering in our elections. They were engaged, and when in fact we were the last election in 2016 against Hillary, they were. There's no question. This man stood before the whole world, turned to the Russian leader, and said, "Why in God's name would this man ever interfere in our elections? Give me a break." 17 intelligence agencies said he did.
Frontrunner Bernie Sanders took the brunt of the attacks. NASA is hanging out the help wanted sign. Need astronauts. NASA is accepting applications for its next class of recruits throughout the month of March. The requirements, U.S. citizenship, A master's degree in either science, technology, engineering, or math? Well, I'm out. And you have to pass NASA's long-duration space flight physical. I'm definitely out. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts, more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom Paul.
Ground control to Major Michael. Thank you so much. Michael Barr there with the news report. The president, again, our conference tonight, I believe it's 6 p.m. We'll have that, of course, on Bloomberg Radio. Very much focused on the virus. CDC in attendance. That, according to Mr. Trump as well. We advance up 355 points. The VIX 24.95 under that critical 25 level. Yields do much better. Higher yields from a 115-ish out to 1.21 on the 2-year yield. That is a better tape. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Although the Geneva Motor Show isn't starting for a week, Volvo got ahead of the game by unveiling the Polestar Precept concept. Renderings of the four-door fully electric luxury concept car reveal an all-glass roof extending down to the tailgate and a low, sleek silhouette that looks like a cross between a sport wagon and a large touring sedan, quite possibly a contender to the front-running Porsche Taycan and Tesla Model S. Inside the Precept, it's all about sustainability. Bye-bye wood, leather, and chrome. Hello seat surfaces knitted from recycled bottles. Headrests made from cork. Carpets reclaimed from fishing nets. Pennsylvania's Allentown Art Museum just discovered that a painting they sent off for cleaning is an actual Rembrandt with a potential multi-million-dollar valuation on the line. Old Masters art dealers caution that these antiques roadshow-like reappraisals happen all the time. Just look at the $450 million Leonardo for proof. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Jill Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Global news.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help. With great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Switch to 5G on Vodafone. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G by March 8th and get wireless Galaxy Buds Plus for free. With unlimited 5G data, you can post 108 megapixel photos and download videos impossibly fast. All on the UK's best mobile data network. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
5G subject to coverage in your area. MPerf test awarded Vodafone Best 2019 Mobile Internet Performance. Minimum term applies. See vodafone.co.uk.
If you see a variable speed limit sign on a motorway, it means do not exceed this speed limit. It's important. Speed limits are there to keep us safe, steady the flow of traffic, and keep us moving. Because we all want to be somewhere. Somewhere like taking the kids for a quiet day out at the safari park. Follow the signs. Keep us all moving. Search Highways England Motorways to find out more.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stocks opened higher while stocks in Europe and Asia remain under pressure as investors digest fresh evidence of the widening coronavirus outbreak. outbreak. This comes in the wake of a more than 6% slide in the S&P 500 over the past 2 days. That's bringing its year-to-date loss at about 2.1%. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg, with the S&P 500 up 1.2% today, up 36 points at 3164. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up 1% or 264 points at 27,353. And the Nasdaq's up 1.4% or 129 points at 9095. 10-year Treasury down 4/32 with 1.36%. The yield on the 2-year 1.20%. NYMEX crude oil down about 0.1%, down 3 cents at 49.87 a barrel. COMEX gold down 1.1% or $17.60 at 16.32.30 an ounce. The euro 1.0858 against the dollar. The yen is at 110.64. And again, with the S&P 500 up 1.2%, BNP Paribas strategist Greg Boudel tells Bloomberg Surveillance that stocks probably won't travel in a straight line from here.
We expect volatility. It's not going to move in a straight line. We could easily get kind of a decent up day, but that could easily be followed by another couple of down days. So I think we're going to see a lot more volatility before positioning washes out.
And we are watching shares of TJX Companies. Best performer in the S&P 500 up today, up 7.8%. The owner of the Marshalls and TJ Maxx chains posting sales that far outpaced Wall Street estimates. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Thanks so much, Karen. Greatly appreciate it. At Chapel Hill, there's a gentleman who prolifically writes books. His name is Robert Kolb, K-O-L-B. And if you're in finance, you wade through Kolb. There's like 10, 12, 14 books. And Paul, there's one point where he's doing EM and emerging markets where you realize the sophistication and depth market to market says a lot. You may not understand it, but it says a lot, which is the only reason to drag Damian Sassower in here.
Yes.
Because I read my Kolb and I know I don't get it. So he's going to make me smarter now. Why don't you bring in someone we're seeing far too much of recently?
Excellent. Damian Sassower covers all things emerging markets for Bloomberg Intelligence. Damian, thanks so much for joining us here in our Bloomberg 1130 studios. I want to go to Brazil. They confirmed the first coronavirus case in Latin America. How do you think kind of Latin America, Brazil is kind of prepared, not prepared? How do they typically react to issues like this?
Well, there's no question. The preparation in Brazil mirrors that of the U.S. I mean, I don't think many of us are prepared if there's a major outbreak. But in terms of Brazil, it was a 61-year-old individual who contracted the virus. I believe he was recently in Italy, and so that's kind of where it came from. Look, it's all about the real now. The real has blown through to new lows, effectively. It's at 4.39, I believe, to the dollar.
4.39.
Yeah, to the dollar. I mean, and look, I mean, Brazil is definitely tied to China via commodities, but not nearly as much as other places in Latin America like Chile and Peru. So, the impact initially has been de minimis, but Brazil's got its own issues, as we're all well aware of here. Certainly its budget deficit. But, I think if you just want to talk about China here and the coronavirus, we did a little bit of an analysis yesterday on the amount of stressed debt, that's debt yielding 15% or more. In local, and a lot of it is coming in March and April, Tom. I mean, a lot of it. And so, this maturity wall is building, and it's something we're definitely keeping a watch on here.
Well, to get back to Kolb in his classic textbook, Futures, Options, and Swaps, 1997, it was a hugely U.S.-based book. Does the Damian Sassower world have the depth of finance now to withstand these shocks?
Well, I mean, look, I mean, it depends on the risk mitigant tools that are available for investors.
Where are they in you? That you see, I couldn't say that. Risk mitigant
tools, futures, forwards, credit default swaps. I mean, again, these are synthetic risk mitigants.
Are they available in the virus-affected EM markets? That's the money. That's the only reason you're here. Answer the question.
For a price. I mean, they're expensive. I mean, there's no question about it. We just did a piece on synthetics, and look, they've completely dislocated from reality. And so, look, I mean, people have to pay up if they want protection in this market. And we're doing a lot of, I mean, look, we're looking at all of that. In fact, I got a deck coming out tomorrow on effective yields, which is what is the fixed coupon equivalent yield you might extract in a place like Brazil, converted back into
double
dollars.
Digit?
Not even close. I mean, you're barely competing with treasuries at this point. I think the 5-year U.S. Treasury is at 1.19%, and they're all hovering right around there. So you don't get much of a pickup anymore, certainly in Brazil.
Why is that? It makes no sense at all.
There's a lot of factors.
Me or our listeners.
There are two primary factors. One's going to be FX, right? FX forward differentials, and the other's going to be the shape of the curve, right? Because, going out 5 years, once you kind of bring that back into dollars, you might just not get, given the slope of the curve, you might not get the same pickup.
that.
Please.
Damien's got this beautiful thing with Brazil, but you may get crushed over the currency, right? Did I do that okay?
I think the currency's come off a long ways, and I think, again, we had Dan Shakovich on yesterday, and it's about the bid and the offer. There's no such thing as a mid price, he says, and I have to agree with him. You want to be providing liquidity in an environment like this, and in Brazil, that's one place you want to be doing it.
What Damien just said there, folks, is why he's on. What's your podcast? Flog the podcast right now. What is he selling?
So yes, we did a BI podcast with Dan Shakovich of Vanguard.
Yeah.
He's the head of EM Active. Go to BI space EMFI Go, and you can find it there.
Folks, this is sick professional. I wouldn't understand it. I have to have one of those fancy San Francisco drinks, a Fernet Blanc in my hand when I listen. Paul, what's so important that he just said there, and folks, this is really, really key. There's a point where it's all yield, and it hits the fan, and you start looking at price, and then after you start looking at price, you start looking at the bid or the ask, because there's nothing in between, Paul.
That's right. Damien, just quickly, when you enter emerging markets world, is the belief that China's got a handle on this thing from an economic perspective? Can they step in and stimulate the economy and kind of stabilize that part of the world?
Well, I'm not expecting a mass state bailout per se, but certainly we could see a sharp increase in the questionable loan ratio across China's banking system, and that could be with us for a long, long time. I think the prevailing thought is that China's got enough ammunition at its disposal to kind of weather this storm. There's no doubt about it. They've got $3 trillion in U.S. dollar reserves. They're in a good place from that perspective. But, for the, small and medium enterprises, the average, man on the street in China, things are going to be very, very painful for the rest of this year, I think. And so that's going to filter into the real economy, and I think that's where we are right now.
I got to go to Turks and Caicos. His tan is sustaining it through the week.
Exactly.
It's amazing.
It comes off in the sheets.
I go to the salon over on 56th Street, 5 floors up and a walk up, and that doesn't do the effect of Damien and Turks and Caicos.
No, not at all. Damien Sassower, thanks so much for joining us. Damien, senior Bloomberg Intelligence analyst covering all things emerging markets. We do see him too much these days because there's just so much going on in the volatility.
It's a huge
that's ripping through the emerging markets.
Almost
all markets.
Litmus paper to look at all the nuances in his market. It's really serious. What we've got now is green on the screen. Thanks to our team for phenomenal conversations today. We're going to drive that forward with Lisa and Paul here in the next hour. But what we've seen is truly, I'm going to say 600, 700 points swing in the market, up from negative 400, negative 500, and we're out now positive 277. The VIX 25.32 in the oil market, even the oil priced above $50 the West Texas barrel. We are produced by Richard Sherman. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at Bell.
Do you go on the same holiday every year? To the same country, in the same hotel, with the same sea view, visit the same ancient monuments, lay by the same dolphin-shaped pool, meet the same Barrys and Sandras, and wear the same Hawaiian shirt that you'd never wear at home? Then maybe it's time to switch it up. Starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Come on, everybody! It's lunchtime, and that means, yeah, you guessed it, jump time! Turn off your tech, get off your chair, and let's get moving! Who's with me?
Or leave the motivation to Vitality. You could get the Apple Watch Series 5 with our health insurance. Set goals, track your activity, and keep that New Year fitness routine on track. Now that's real motivation. Search Vitality Health. Life's better with Vitality. Available on certain Vitality plans. Minimum premiums, terms, and exclusions apply.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social. From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Undisputed, we are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app. Listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
About wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks opened higher while stocks in Europe and Asia remain under pressure as investors digest fresh evidence of the widening coronavirus outbreak. The dollar is advancing. All three main U.S. equity gauges in positive territory in the wake of a more than 6% slide in the benchmark S&P 500 over the past 2 days. 10-year Treasury yields, they're lingering near the record low close that was set yesterday. Eleanor Cray, a strategist at Saxo Capital Markets, says the ultimate impact of the coronavirus outbreak remains entirely unknown at this stage, and uncertainty is the enemy of conviction. Well, governments are increasingly relying on machine learning and data analytics to analyze troves of data as they seek to detect tax evasion. The IRS is designing machine-built graphs, giving auditors a new tool to analyze transactions and detect tax avoidance. The Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ are all up over 1%. I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Where's your views on the municipal bond landscape?
The market does not like uncertainty, does not react well to uncertainty.
There's a whole lot of optimism around the valuation of Uber.
What is Ford saying about the self-driving car?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Maybe we're getting hooked on debt and low interest.
The black hole called power could be a bigger black hole.
Only buy IPO stock that you can't get. If you can get it, it's probably a dog you don't want it.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
A bit of buying the dip coming up here on Bloomberg Markets. We're going to be talking about the bit of reversal that we're seeing, at least in early trading in New York in equities. Plus, we'll take a look at what the latest is on the coronavirus that appears to be spreading now to Latin America. Right now, though, let's head over to our own Greg Jarrett for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg.
Stocks are up. You haven't heard me say that for a while. In fact, 5 days as investors digest fresh evidence of the widening coronavirus. The dollar's higher. All three main American equity gauges are positive in the wake of more than 6% slide in the benchmark S&P over the past couple of days. Morgan Stanley Sheets says coronavirus concerns mask broader global weakness.
You know, what we're having now is obviously very much public health triggered, but, you know, we shouldn't forget that really the story from the start of this year has been a market that seems to be very concerned about the level of growth, and this only, unfortunately, reinforces those concerns.
We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day here on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500. 0.9% up 27. The Dow's up 0.8% up 227. And the NASDAQ's up 1.2% up 105. The 10-year is down 1/32. The yield is 1.35%. West Texas Intermediate Crude is up 0.2% at $50.02 a barrel. COMEX Gold's down 0.8% at $16.3730 an ounce. The dollar yen 110.58. The euro $1.860. The British pound $1.2926. And just crossing the Bloomberg terminal, U.S. January new home sales are up to 764,000. The estimate was for 718,000. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Bloomberg Markets is underway with Lisa and Paul.
Greg Jarrett, thanks so much. We appreciate that. Green on the screen as Greg is reporting, although we are off the highs. Let's get a sense of where we are seeing some action. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson joins us here. Dave, what are you looking at right now?
Well, there's plenty to go through. I mean, since we just got the numbers on the new home sales, and the home builders are no doubt of interest. And the thing is, they're down. So you had this result out of Toll Brothers, fiscal first quarter figures from them, and it did not go over well at all. Earnings and sales coming up short of analysts' average estimates in the Bloomberg survey. Now they're focused on the luxury home market, and you can argue maybe their results aren't so indicative of what lies ahead for the industry as they report quarterly results. Then again, you look at the builders in the S&P 500 and you see they're down. You've got D.R. Horton off almost 3%, Lennar down about 2%, Pulte Group down 2.5%. You know, and NVR is also lower. I mean, all this coming after the report on new home sales from the government. You know, you look at the numbers there and, you know, well above projections in terms of January sales. So it's almost like what's happening in the big picture is kind of taking a back seat to what's happening on the earnings front, at least for that industry.
You know, it's interesting when you take a look at the overall market, there's an inconsistency today. And certainly we felt this ahead of the open, where equity indexes and futures were just flipping from positive to negative and swinging around. Now we are solidly positive, despite the fact that Brazil has confirmed its first case of coronavirus. So if the spread of the coronavirus was what was getting everyone nervous yesterday, doesn't seem to be having the same sort of knee-jerk risk-off feel today. However, in the bond market, 2-year yields hitting the lowest since April 2017. And you've got 10-year yields now basically flat on the day near those all-time lows. So you just have to think the message is not all clear. The message isn't, just a clear-cut buy the dip, be risk on, and try to pick up some speed here with the revival of equities.
No, absolutely. And the easiest way to kind of see that is to look at the travel-related shares, whether we're talking about airlines or cruise lines or online travel companies or whatever. I mean, that they showed some resiliency before the opening bell. And now you look at these stocks, they're lower. Pretty much all the airlines in the S&P 500 are down. You've got the cruise lines lower, Carnival's off 1.5%, Norwegian's lower by 1%. Booking Holdings, whose earnings are due out. I mean, that stock's down 1.5%. They're going to be coming out with numbers after the close of trading today. So, you know, it's not like people have kind of gone back and said, okay, we're past this. Things are, moving forward from here. I mean, the concern is still out there, and you really see it in those stocks and companies that are most affected by what's happening.
Yeah, we had Nouriel Roubini on from NYU, professor, on earlier today, and a very bearish case.
Yeah, well, he's Dr. Doom.
He is Dr. Doom. Come on. But boy, he laid out, forget the V shape, U shape. I'm not even sure about
Armageddon.
that. Yes. So he laid out quite the bearish case. And I think you're seeing it, Dave, in some of those stocks that are being most directly affected by this virus.
Yeah, and the bearish case is an easy one to make in the sense that, we've had a bull market for almost 11 years now in U.S. stocks, depending on how you count it. And we've seen records as recently as last week for the S&P 500, and, it's certainly pulled back given the effects of the coronavirus and the anticipation of what it may mean for the earnings in the economy now here in the U.S. As the ailment spreads. So, you've got that going on. And beyond that, it's really just kind of a matter of a market trying to find its own level at this point. So, it's really easy to say that this isn't the level, which is more or less what someone in the doom and gloom camp would tell you.
Doom, no less.
Yes.
I will just say this. I think that this is a really notable development. We did get this headline, Vince Signorella, our macro strategist, feeding me information about why there are the fluctuations in the tape that there are, and we are seeing equities pull back from earlier highs. He pointed out this headline that Brazil is tracking 20 suspected cases of the new coronavirus in the country. Interesting, though, still solidly positive. NASDAQ up 1%, S&P and Dow up 0.7%. Not enough to stymie this particular blip upwards relative to the down that we've seen recently. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, and the real question now is, is, given the fact that we look forward to a press conference at 6 o'clock New York time, President Trump talking about the coronavirus
with CDC officials, and this is actually important because yesterday there was a huge gap in between what the CDC was saying and what President Trump and some of the members of his cabinet were saying, where they were saying it's contained. CDC saying the chance of a widespread issue in the United States growing more significant.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what kind of message they have and who from the CDC will be there.
Yeah,
that would be interesting.
Is it a united front or is it a mixed message? I mean, that's going to be very much the question. And it's something that you got to think about. I mean, to the extent that there is the concern about what may happen here in the U.S., which has largely escaped the worst of this virus so far.
The worst of it? We haven't had any of it. We've had 50 people who've been diagnosed?
Yeah, I think, it's, so the issue is if it becomes a bigger issue here, I'm wondering if you think about the market, at the pullback from the high, a lot of people tell you that's a healthy pullback for a market that's had such a good run, and maybe even some more wouldn't be the worst thing in terms of the longer term tape for the market.
Well, there is that thought. And then there's the other thought, which basically suggests, at some point the party has to end. I mean, you can't go on forever with stocks moving up and moving up and moving up. So that's the other piece of it. And are you getting a different message out of the stock market if it does manage to rebound? Then you might be out of the bond market where you're seeing these record low yields on treasuries, which would suggest that maybe things aren't so great. So the challenge is to put the pieces together and then to be able to figure out, well, what do you do from there?
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing for the Fed to do clearly is to cut rates. That's what the market is saying. They are now expecting nearly 3 rate cuts by the end of January of next year. I think it's interesting, though, you are seeing credit markets freezing up in terms of new issuance.
Yep.
And IPOs getting paused.
Yeah, you talk about that. You talk about the new issue market. Both buyers and sellers have to have some level of confidence going forward. And I think this coronavirus introducing a level of concern that's causing both sides of the market to kind of freeze up a little bit. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thanks so much for joining us, giving us that update on the U.S. Equity markets. Again, seeing a little bit of lift here. We are off the highs, but still holding here. S&P up about 0.8%. Same for the Dow. NASDAQ a little bit better, up a little over 1%. So again, some strength there after 2 days of very aggressive selling. Heavy volume on the way down. So a real move down here, a little bit of stability. Down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
All right, just to pass along some of the latest headlines on the coronavirus, Paul, that first case in Brazil you mentioned was a 61-year-old man who had recently traveled to northern Italy. That has emerged as the European hotspot of this outbreak that has killed more than 2,700 people around the world and infected more than 81,000. As you mentioned, President Trump will hold a news conference tonight with the Centers for Disease Control on the U.S. government's response. Dr. Anthony Fauci at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases says the U.S. does have a playbook.
We've had a pandemic preparedness plan that we really developed in preparation for pandemic influenza that we can extrapolate to this.
The White House has asked for $2.5 billion of emergency funding from Congress. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer wants $8.5 billion. The House may vote on a coronavirus funding plan the week of March 9th. The president is facing criticism for his rosy reaction to the outbreak so far, including from Democrats at the CBS debate heard here on Bloomberg Radio last night. Senator Bernie Sanders.
April is the magical day that this great scientist we have in the White House has determined. I wish I was kidding.
Again, the news conference from President Trump is set for 6 p.m. Wall Street time. Bloomberg Radio will bring it to you live. The man many consider the kingmaker for Democrats in South Carolina is endorsing Joe Biden. House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn made that announcement this morning.
I know Joe. We know Joe. But most importantly, Joe knows us.
Global news on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Revisions, return policies. There are so many ways to redo a decision.
What are the ramifications? Crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Do they have any path other than the courts?
Except here, we have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war. Are there winners?
So that you can too.
How does your modeling have to pivot to reflect a different scenario?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise.
Discover Ireland's Wild Atlantic Way with Aer Lingus. Fly London to the west of Ireland from $32.99 each way as part of a return trip. Enjoy breathtaking scenery, taste fresh seafood, and explore wild coastal walks. Smart enjoys a short break in Ireland. Smart flies Aer Lingus. Book now at airlingus.com. Offer subject to conditions and availability.
I'm Peter Jones. Lifting business performance is critical in today's uncertain times. But how do you keep up with changing regulations and rising demands? How do you break free from manual processes to raise productivity? The answer is technology that elevates performance and comes with industry-leading support. Over 1 million UK businesses, including my investment group, trust Sage to manage their finances, operations and people.
Elevate your business today with our free performance review. Visit sage.com/perform.
What am I saving for? My passion. Food photography.
I trained to be a landscape garden designer.
Open a food stall and sell my famous fish tacos.
I go to stuntman school.
I'd be a wedding planner.
I'd start a dog grooming business. Sorry, we'd start a dog grooming business.
What are you waiting for? Make your one day happen with a Fidelity Stocks and Shares ISA. Your capital risk tax rules may change. Full terms for our stocks and shares ISA are available on our website, 18 plus UK residents.
Despite never having used them, Alison Peartree was not initially a fan of purple bricks.
Because I heard from my uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker they don't have proper estate agents.
But Alison's uncle's cousin's neighbour's dog walker was wrong. Purple Bricks have experienced local agents ready to sell your home.
Turns out Martin from Purple Bricks was very knowledgeable. And he didn't charge commission. I've even recommended him to my sister's boyfriend's auntie's hairdresser, Sharon.
Purple Bricks. Book your free valuation today.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months. Viewing service cost extra.
When you're driving along a motorway and you see a red X sign, it means stay out of that lane because there's a hazard up ahead. Red X signs are there to keep us safe and keep us moving, because we all want to be somewhere. Somewhere like going to watch the undefeated Blue and Whites being defeated. Oh, well, it's always next season. Follow the signs. Keep us all moving. Search Highways England Motorways to find out more.
Vodafone 5G will have the power to change your world. From driverless cars to virtual reality and real-time gaming. That's why we're rolling out 5G across the UK. Discover Vodafone 5G on the UK's best mobile data network. The future's exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
NPerf testing awarded Vodafone Best 2019 mobile internet performance based on 35,664 tests on the NPerf app in the UK. Coverage may vary. Visit vodafone.co.uk.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks are gaining. It's the first time in 5 days. Investors are digesting new evidence of the widening coronavirus outbreak. The dollar is higher. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500's up 1.25%, up 38. The Dow's up 1.25%, up 333, and the Nasdaq's up 1.5%, up 133. The 10-year is down 3/32. The yield is 1.36%. West Texas Intermediate crude's up 0.2% at 50.01 a barrel. COMEX gold's down 1% at 16.33.10 per ounce. The dollar yen is 110.60. The euro $1.860. The British pound $1.29.21. Some more new home sales numbers. They jumped at the start of the year, reaching the strongest pace since mid-2007 on the heels of cheaper borrowing costs, favorable weather, and a resilient labor market. Single-family home sales were up 7.9%, exceeding the median estimate in a Bloomberg survey. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, Lisa, clearly investors are concerned about the coronavirus and what it means for global GDP, the movement of goods and services. Our next guest, I think, can give us a really, really good perspective on what's happening on the ground. Roberto Simon, Chief Financial Officer for WEX Incorporated. It's a New York Stock Exchange traded company. WEX is a symbol, financial electronic payment. Focusing on the fleet business, the travel business, the healthcare business. So, Roberto, thanks so much for joining us here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. What are you seeing in your day-to-day business? You look at the fund flows in a whole bunch of business verticals, payments, electronic payments, fund flows. What are you seeing over the last several weeks and months from the coronavirus?
Good morning. Well, as you can imagine, this is now a very rapidly and evolving situation for us. In January, we saw some slowdown on our travel business, which is around 10% of the total business of WEX. And we saw some impacts and a slowdown in Hong Kong and Australia, so mainly on the Asia region. But what we have seen in the last few weeks is that the trends are starting to expand to other regions, including Europe and North America as well.
This is actually a really important perspective because WEX handles the back office logistics and the payments for a variety of different businesses. You're saying 10% having to do with travel. But beyond that, can we get a sense of the services, the industrial, the other sectors that are being affected and how much you're seeing it at this point and in what regions?
Yeah. So in the second half of 2019, before the coronavirus, we start seeing some softness on the industrial sectors, on the over-the-road business here in the U.S. And what we are seeing in the last 4 to 6 weeks is that there's a lack of goods, and the impact on the over-the-road business is accelerating because there's no goods to move in the country. And because of the inventory levels are being so low, what is happening is that, they are exhausting the inventories and there's no replenishment. So we are watching it very close, and we hope that this is being resolved now quickly.
How about some of your clients in the travel industry? We're seeing that in the stocks, whether it's the cruise lines or the hotels or the airlines. What's kind of the data you're seeing there?
So we talk with them on a daily basis now. Mostly the things they are seeing is cancellations, which obviously in a situation like the coronavirus is the number one factor. And we are monitoring with them what is the level of those cancellations and in which regions. So they are able to tell, listen, we have 30-40% cancellations in specific countries or regions, and that's a very important KPI for us to monitor.
Is there any historical analogy that you can think of, any other period of time where you saw this sharp of a drop-off in such a quick period of time?
Yes, I mean, if you look back to past pandemic issues, and Morgan Stanley has issued a couple of reports, what you see is a sharp decline on the volumes, and then after 2, 3, 4 months, they quickly come back to the same levels that they were before.
Is that kind of your expectation here, or does this feel a little different?
So what I would say to you is that we are monitoring very close. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, and the only thing we can do is manage where we are today, manage on a daily basis and on a weekly basis how the things are evolving, and just keep an eye on what is going on. because the past doesn't tell you the future, obviously.
Right. So putting the coronavirus fears and the subsequent slowdown that you're seeing in certain industries aside, there's a broader shift going on within the payments industry, consolidation very much in the focus for a lot of big companies. How important is that for you to grow either by acquisition or by building out businesses right now?
For us, there are two very important pillars. I mean, when we talk to investors, we want to grow organically. And I mean, if you look in the past 2, 3, 4 years, organically we have been growing double digit. So that's very important for us.